Hi there, I'm Bhupendra Chaubey and welcome to another episode of Rest of the Story. Every week we try and turn the spotlight on an issue which should be of serious concern to you. Well, today we're going to look at that question: should Anil Agarwal controlled Sterlite Copper Industries be allowed to restart operation? Economy versus environment. For a long time, this has been a subject of a raging debate in our country. Well, now what's happened is that the infamous Sterlite Copper Plant in Tuticorin in Tamil Nadu, which was forcibly shut down by the state government post a gas leak, which led to the unfortunate death of almost 13 people.
I'm very sad to hear the incident, what happened yesterday. This was absolutely unfortunate. I have my full sympathy with the family. The plant is closed because of annual shutdown, and we are waiting for clearance from the court and the government to restart the plant.
Now, Vedanta Group, led by Anil Agarwal, who otherwise puts a lot of very inspiring posts on LinkedIn about the kind of family he comes from, about how he is a proud Bihari, about how his roots are so humble. Finally, Vedanta Group now has filed a note before the Supreme Court stating that it has agreed to the court's suggestion for an expert committee to evaluate whether the copper smelter plant in Tuticorin can really be reopened or not. The conversation which happened in the Supreme Court, in the court of none less than the Chief Justice of India, was a very, very interesting conversation. On one hand, you had the council representing Sterlite, and on the other hand, you had the council representing those who are arguing against the opening of this plant. What are the sum and substance of this entire conversation? And that's what we want to do here on Rest of the Story. The sum and substance of this entire conversation, arguments which have taken place in the topmost court of a 3-judge bench is this: that the court still wants to pursue a very, very careful line. To quote the Chief Justice, he goes on to say that if he was to think in terms of setting aside the High Court order which had been passed earlier, and if there was to be, say, a similar gas leak as had happened earlier, then imagine the kind of moral dilemma, the kind of moral pressure which would be there on the topmost court of the country. Why has this subject become such a huge area of concern for the authorities? Here's a bit of a background for you. In 2018, the Tamil Nadu government had ordered the closure of Sterlite Copper because there were violent protests, all captured in full glare of television cameras. There was one view at that time that all this was nothing else but a handiwork of anti-India forces, handiwork of NGOs who were being supported by interests inimical to India's growth story. The government had cited violation of environmental norms as a reason for the closure. Now, if you look at facts, the facts are the plant at the time when it was closed was producing over 400,000 tons of metal ores annually. It accounted for 40% of India's total copper output. Because what has been the narrative? The narrative has been that Sterlite Copper Plant must be opened because it was accounting for 40% of India's total copper growth. Now, because Sterlite Copper Plant has been closed down, therefore, India has ended up becoming more dependent on copper imports. Dependency on copper imports versus an individual's right to clean, free air. How do you solve this paradox? How do you solve this riddle? That's the challenge which was there before the Chief Justice led bench today. Now, Senior Advocate Shyam Diwan, who represented Vedanta, his argument was that this plant was shut down by the Tamil Nadu government despite all necessary consents, all necessary approvals, all necessary permissions which are required. Everything was provided by Vedanta, but the government took this position that absence of groundwater report and inadequate air quality monitoring were strong enough reasons for this plant to be shut down. Shyam Diwan also took great pains to point out to the government that the country as a whole would struggle if this plant was to shut down. Now, what will happen is that once this expert committee prepares its final note, the final note will be acceptable to all sides. The Chief Justice has also said that let there be enough financial compensations or say financial damages, if at all they were to be incurred in future as some kind of a penalty. What all this points us towards is that in our country, this battle between economic growth and environmental protection is still not settled. Because I can honestly think of many similar cases. You remember in Mumbai, when Uddhav Thackeray was the chief minister, the decision was taken by the Uddhav Thackeray-led faction of Shiv Sena to stop certain construction activities which would have endangered the Borivali National Park. Aditya Thackeray took great pains pointing out that the metro shed which was to be created in the RA colony, that extension of land permissions, the land which would have been, say, carved out of forested area would not be good for Mumbai's green lungs. Now, once Uddhav Thackeray is out, that decision has been overturned. Already, there are all kinds of whispers, all kinds of murmurs of dissent which are being raised as to what were the reasons for this decision to have been taken. It's in that context that I think that the Tuticorin plant issue, this copper smeltering business, becomes so very critical, because if there was to be a middle path that was to be found, I think it will go a long way in this debate being settled somewhere in our country, that in areas where there may be a question mark of safety. For instance, during the Supreme Court hearing, this question was raised by the Chief Justice. He wanted to know that how many such industries were operating in the state of Tamil Nadu in that red corridor, red industry in the red corridor. And a council said that there were 27 such industries. But the government's argument, the activists' argument was that there was no facility for copper smeltering as big as Vedanta, which was operating in the state of Tamil Nadu. Therefore, if anyone has to be held accountable, if anyone has to be held responsible for any future mishap, then it has to be Vedanta Group. Anil Agarwal, the chairman of Vedanta, he wants the country to look at himself in a certain way. Well, my honest appeal to Mr. Agarwal is this, that his contribution to the growth of India's economic story has been looked at very closely. But I think somewhere the big tycoons of our country also need to factor in that the poor and downtrodden, they may not be visible before the glare of television cameras, but they also have a voice and they also have a heart. And their voice and their heart also needs to be factored in. If that factorization has taken place, I think Sterlite Copper Plant deserves every single chance to help India meet its copper production facility. If we were to map copper's demand year on year in 2023, it's 16%. But the fascinating figure for me is to map it in terms of clean energy technologies. Mining copper in clean energy technologies, 32% year-on-year growth. So it tells you that there is enough innovation which is taking place. Whatever decision is being taken, there will be a set of individuals, a set of political activists who will say that this will endanger the lives of fisher folks. This will endanger the lives of poor and downtrodden. That endangering of the lives question is what I think Chairman of Vedanta Group, Mr. Anil Agarwal, needs to look at closely. It had provided employment opportunities to people in Tamil Nadu, in that area. Now, if Mr. Agarwal was to blend that out by giving them a safety net, I think it will be a smart way forward.